welcome to the full Monty and a cup of Joe. We took a week off last week, but we're back.
Yes, we
and
are.
if you can believe it, Monty, some people actually missed this. Can you believe that?
No, really.
Yeah,
Uh,
I had a couple people ask, "Where were you guys last week?" So that's
oh,
nice to hear.
yeah, that is. I hate that we let them down. We'll try and be more consistent with it from now on. Sorry, guys. That was my fault, not Joe's.
No, that's all right, man. Well, let's get into it this week. We're gonna talk a little K-State football, and we're gonna talk about South Carolina, which I caught most of that game, and I'm sure Monty caught all of it, and that was a really good game. Then we'll talk a little bit about the top 25 and what that looks like, and maybe some of the other major storylines at college football, and then we'll get into the NFL a little bit. So, how's that sound, buddy?
That sounds good to me. Let's do it.
All
Let's
right.
not
Well,
keep
K
them
State
waiting.
played Friday night on Fox and came out with a 31-7 victory against Arizona. And Arizona was ranked in the top 20. They were 20th in one poll and 18th in the other. And this wasn't a game where they blew them out the whole game, but they kind of got a lead. Then they got a little bigger lead. Then they got a little bigger lead. And then, in the fourth quarter, it ends up it's 31-7 blowout. Arizona's, they've got some talent on that team offensively, especially the quarterback's good, and they have a receiver who's probably going to be the top receiver taken in the NFL draft next year. He's really good, and quarterback threw to that receiver number 4 a lot. And you could tell the talent there, but Arizona got the opening kick and they drove right down for a touchdown. K State actually held them to a fourth down, and it was a fourth and short, and Arizona went for it and converted. But they did score a touchdown on that first drive and didn't really do a lot offensively after that. So credit to the K State defense. They really stepped up, kind of let that K State offense kind of find their way and get going. So, did you watch this game, Monty, or what did you think?
Well, it was Friday night, so it was a little bit tough for me. My daughter plays volleyball, and that was her volleyball game night. But the little bits and pieces that I was able to catch of it, it seemed like K State was walking through glue a little bit until they broke free of it. They just seemed a little bit slow out of the gate, but once they got going, everything seemed to click nicely, and they really looked pretty impressive against a top 20 ranked Arizona team. I wonder if they can come out on fire at that speed. It seemed like, I don't know, just looking at the little bits and pieces, like I said, that I saw, it seemed like maybe there was a little bit of confusion or a little bit of slowness there in that first half, but the second half looked a lot better and a lot more crisp, at least to me. So what are your thoughts on that?
They're still trying to find their way offensively. Got 2 new offensive coordinators, and they're still trying to find their way. They're trying to get Dylan Edwards the ball more. And really, the offense did respond to that opening touchdown by Arizona, and K State answered right away and scored a touchdown. But yeah, it did take them a while to get the cogs rolling on the offense. It was a bunch of punts, and then they got a big punt return by Dylan Edwards that he outran the whole Arizona punt team to to get the touchdown on that, and that was crazy. I mean, it was what a return on that, and that kind of got the whole team going. They got the stadium, they got the crowd even more into it, and it seemed like the offense finally kind of woke them up. And it's kind of like how they started in Clue. That's a good way to put it. Maybe it was a Friday night, kind of Friday night doldrums. It's a little bit different than playing on a Saturday. And maybe, they were just kind of lethargic a little bit coming out. But once that offense got going, everything was fine. And the defense really stepped up. And defense isn't allowing the Arizona to score. It's much easier on that K State offense. I did like what they did. Avery Johnson ran the ball more. He had over 100 yards rushing in this game, and that's a good sign. You don't want him running too much. You don't want to get him injured. or anything like that. But he's going to need to be that dual threat quarterback if they're going to have the success they want to have this season. He can't be afraid to run the ball, especially when he sees openings in the defense. He's going to have to take off with it when he sees the holes and stuff. So basically, I liked what I saw on the offense. The defense, we talked about 2 weeks ago, the defense is going to carry this team this year, and they did their job. So I was pretty happy with it overall.
Avery's definitely young. He's probably, a little bit green, a little rough around the edges, certainly at this level of football. I think he's got a lot of upside. And that defense is amazing. The K-State team as a whole, I've really harped on it in our podcast so far, but just the speed, the overall team speed that K-State has at times is just amazing. And if you can factor in, maybe factor in is the wrong word. If you can come out hitting on all cylinders as far as catching the ball, throwing the ball, and running the ball, coupled with the speed on that defense and just the speed on that offense. I mean, I don't really see anyone, from what I've seen collectively from everyone so far, I don't see anyone on K-State's schedule that really is going to have much of a chance of stopping them. Maybe Oklahoma State, looking down the list here. Iowa State's sitting there at number 20 now, but that's a lot of space in between here and there, right? But yeah,
that's the last game of the year.
Yeah, I don't see anyone. I haven't seen, of the remaining teams on K-State's schedule, I've not seen anyone play as crisp or as fast as K-State is able to play at times, and it's just amazing. And I don't think they'll have much of a problem this weekend at BYU.
I think as long as that offense comes out and takes control from the get-go, and I'd like to see a couple early scores and go up 14-0 or 14-3. That'd make me feel a little bit better about it. I just don't want BYU to stay in that game very long. I'd like to put them away early and not even be nervous about it. Because if the longer BYU stays in that game, the more their confidence builds, and you never know what can happen at a game like this. There's elevation. They have the home field advantage. So we can't just come out and be lethargic, kind of go through the motions. They got to be fired up, and they got to take control of this game from the get-go.
Does that late starting time concern you at all?
Yeah, it does. More concerned. I'm concerned about it because I may fall asleep, to be honest.
It's 10:30, so I'm guessing that's 9:30 your time. I'm guessing that's probably 8:30.
I'll put on a pot of coffee and be good.
Yeah, exactly. Drink some extra caffeine there. I'm guessing that's 8:30 out in Utah. Is that the
I think it's 7:30 there.
Wow. Okay, so they're all the way on Pacific time. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, that's a late one. I don't know if I'll make it up for staying up for that one. I might have to catch that one on the next day on the recording. But yeah, I mean, that should be a good game. It's
definitely later than players are used to playing. But of course, they did just play on Friday night at 7:00. So, it's a couple hours later in the day.
Now, you'll have to forgive me. My K-State history isn't up to par. Do K-State and BYU have much of a history?
Not really. The last time they played, it was in the Cotton Bowl in 1994, and Steve Sarkisian was the quarterback at BYU, and BYU won the game 19-14. And I was at the game. It was at the old Cotton Bowl. So Jerry World wasn't built yet or anything like that. It was at the Cotton Bowl where they have the fairgrounds and everything. But yeah, K-State drove the ball down the field and had I think it was like a fourth and goal, and threw an incomplete pass. Otherwise, they would have won the game. So it was a real nail biter game. But yeah, that's the only time I remember us playing BYU.
Some of those BYU teams were really good.
Oh yeah, that one was really good. They were They might have been in the top 10, I think.
Yeah, BYU was knocking on the national championship there a couple of years.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
So they're no stranger to winning. But I think that if K State doesn't win this by a comfortable margin, I think at least a 2-score margin, I would be surprised. I don't think that going into the fourth quarter that this is a very close ball game. Anything can happen, like you said. It is an away game. It is late at night. There's a lot of unknowns there. BYU's undefeated, but still, I think that just the speed that K State has, I just think they're much more prepared of a team. I think they're probably a much better coached team, and I don't see this being a very close game, just based on what little bit I know of the skill level of the two teams and the players on the two teams.
Yeah, BYU is they're undefeated on the year, but they really haven't played anybody, so it's kind of hard to tell. They have a real good dual threat quarterback. He had 100 yards rushing last week against Wyoming. They won 34-14. Now, how good is Wyoming? We don't really know.
Right.
They beat Southern Illinois.
How far do you want to extrapolate, who played who and who beat who? I mean, you
Yeah.
can go any number of directions that, you want to with that.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, we don't really know how good they are. They weren't good in the league last year. That's about all I know right now.
South
Um,
K State's 2 wins at home against UT Martin and Arizona. They've piled on the points. I mean, with a 35-point win and a 24-point win. So you hope that they can learn to carry that on the road. They came out of Tulane with a 7-point win, but I still believe that that's a tough Tulane team, and I think that Tulane team yet has some noise to make. I
oh,
don't
I
see
think
any.
so too.
Yeah, I don't see anything to be ashamed of coming out of Tulane with a 7-point victory. But they've crushed their 2 home opponents. Now, granted, that was UT Martin, but that was also a top 20 Arizona team. So, you know, what does that tell you? What do we know with 3 games under our belts? We still don't know everything. We know more than we did before the season began, and we know more than we did at week 1, obviously. But we're still just going into week 4, and we're really going to start to learn here in the next coming weeks. We're really going to start to learn who everybody is.
Yeah. So BYU beat Southern Illinois 41-13 week 1. Then they went at SMU and they won 18-15, which I think people were surprised they won that game. I think everyone thought SMU was going to win. And we don't know how good SMU is either, but that was a close game. And then they got last week, they kind of blew out Wyoming 34-14. So they look pretty good at times for sure. So I think, let's see, I was looking up the point spread. Did you look up the spread on this one?
Oh, yeah, I just had it right here in front of me. K State, BYU. I think it's 7.
Yeah, 6.5 is what I'm
6.
seeing.
Yeah,
So,
well, they got ESPN, whoever, they go through, they've got -6 with a total of 48.5. So I would take the over in that. I think that with the numbers that K State's put up, I think that there'll be more than 50 points scored in this game. I would take, if I were betting on this game, I would take Kansas State to cover the 6, and I would take the over. I forced to bet. I see a 14, 17 point K State win. They've just impressed me as that kind of team. I think with the defense overall, and with the overall speed across all of their starting 22, I just don't see BYU effectively being able to slow them down.
yep, I agree with you. Paper looks like that's about right. I take K State 2 to cover. And yeah, about I don't know, 31-17 games, something like that. It's kind of what I'm seeing. So I think we're on the same page there.
Yeah, should be a good game.
Yep. So how about your South Carolina Gamecocks? They had a really interesting game Saturday against LSU, and wow, I mean, I'll be honest, they played better than I thought they were going to play, and they actually had the game in control at near the end of the game. I mean, the students were even getting prepared to storm the field. But it ended up LSU scored that touchdown at the end, and boy, what a heartbreaker.
Yeah, I don't ever like to be the guy that blames officials, because I think that you should play the game in such a fashion that officials shouldn't decide the game. Now, it can and oftentimes does come down to a crucial call in the final seconds of the game that does have a huge impact on that game. The outrage may be a strong word. The angst, the frustration, whatever you want to call it, not just with this game, but with officiating in general, is really, really increasing. And we're seeing this at all levels of major football. We're seeing this with obviously with D1 football. We're seeing this even with some of the FCS games, and we're certainly seeing it in the NFL. I think that there were some gross examples of poor officiating in the South Carolina game, and I'm not strictly just referring to calls that went against South Carolina. There was also calls that went against LSU that were questionable. There were several instances, at least two that I know of for a fact. Two may not be several, but there were at least a couple or a few instances where the officials are calling out the wrong number, or they're calling out the number of a player who's not even on the field. And then there was an ineligible receiver call, I think, on our number 18, who is a receiver. So what in the world is happening there? The pick six, the run back, where our player hit the quarterback. Yes, that happened. That definitely happened. Okay. Now, did he go out with all of his might and try and decapitate the guy? No, he didn't, but it was still a stupid thing to do, and it was completely preventable. When I officiated football, and granted, I didn't officiate at the SEC level, so I was never under that much scrutiny or on television for everybody to review my work. But one thing that we always told each other as officials that we needed to remember for every game that we went into was, we know we can throw a flag on every play. Every official knows that. Everybody that's ever officiated a football game knows you can throw a flag legitimately on every single play. You can find a penalty if you look for them. The point is not to look for penalties. The point is to watch for penalties that affect the play. If number 75 is holding a defensive lineman on the complete other side of the field from where the ball is being ran, I don't care. Let him hold him. If he's holding him right in front of where the guy's going to run the ball, now we got a problem, because now you have affected the play. A couple of guys over here on the side farting around out of the play, whatever they're doing, as long as it's nothing, serious, like endangering somebody, or, they're not really trying to hurt somebody, let it go. It doesn't matter. Stick to what could affect the play. And I think that some of these officials are getting farther and farther away from that. Aside from that, there was just some blatant calls that you just got to scratch your head about. Now, I've gotten
I think
that rant out.
officiating across the board is pretty bad.
Well, people
just because it's not consistent game to game or crew to crew. That's my biggest frustration with it, I guess.
Yeah, I can see that side of it. And I think that there's also a side of it where, for the fan and for the players and the coaches, there is no recourse. There is no explanation. There is no further discussion. There is no, hey, I disagree with this. Can you explain to me why that happened? Nobody gets the satisfaction of that. It's just, it's like your dad when you were a kid. It's because I said so. And so that's kind of, is there's no explanation to the missed calls or the bad calls or the calls that nobody understands. There's no explanation given. There's no question and answer session. There's no dialogue. It's just you take it because I said it, and you don't have a choice. And I don't think that sits well with a lot of people. But I also feel like you won't necessarily hear a lot of officials or former officials say that there are bad calls being made. And I don't think that that's because of any kind of, brotherhood or whatever. We don't want to make our bad. I don't think it's because of that. I just think that there's so much that happens in the game, and the game happens at such a speed that it's not always possible when you're on the field to see things in the exact speed that you're able to see when you're rewinding them 4 or 5 times and you're looking at it from multiple angles. You're not able to do that on the field. A lot of these are bang bang things that happen instantly. You've got to make a judgment call right now. And oh, by the way, you've also got to factor in player safety. You've got to factor in the flow of the game. I'm sure with these SEC and Big 12 and Big 10 referees, I'm sure that the television factor is part of their management of the game. So there's a lot that goes into it. But yeah, I do ultimately, yeah, I agree with you. I think that it is getting worse. And I don't know what the solution is. You can't review every call, because then you're
No,
just going to have sick.
I think the reviews are getting ridiculous anyway. It
If,
seems like they are reviewing every other call. I know
well,
they're
yeah.
not, but it sure seems like they are when
Well,
you're sitting there watching a game.
if you start doing that, if you get really into the minutia of every little thing that happens on the field, you're going to wind up having 6 hour games, and no one's going to want that.
Yeah, no one
Least of
wants
all,
that.
yeah, least of all the mouse. Let me touch on the team a little bit. I think South Carolina's doing well. I'm very curious about how effective they were against Kentucky and how effective Kentucky was against UGA. That's again one of those things that we were just discussing. How far do you want to extrapolate which factor? Can you say that, well, because Kentucky almost beat UGA and South Carolina beat Kentucky badly, that therefore South Carolina would beat UGA? Absolutely not. If UGA comes into Columbia today, they probably beat us pretty handily. We have got to clean up a lot of messes for South Carolina. And what I mean by that is a lot of mental error, a lot of self-inflicted error. There's a lot of things that we are doing to ourselves to hurt ourselves as a program. Things like poor clock management, things like not knowing where you're at on the field. That's part of having a freshman quarterback. I understand that, but that's also part of coaching. And I don't understand what it is about South Carolina. I don't understand where the Jekyll and Hyde comes from. 1 minute, it's like I'm watching a team that is just absolutely unstoppable and everything they do is just right. And then the next minute, I'm watching a team that's going 3-and-out and getting negative yardage. And I don't understand what's happening from one series to the next. I don't know if this is play calling. I don't know if this is defensive scheming. I'm not sure what this is. But the team that I saw in the first half against LSU was not the team that I saw in the second half against LSU. Granted, Lenora Sellers goes out right before halftime with an ankle injury. We're still not 100% certain what's going on with that. But Robbie Ashford comes in, who's supposed to be an effective backup, who Shane Beamer said that they have faith in, and you don't hardly throw the ball. You wind up, throwing it a couple times. You get one lucky pass. I mean, he scored. So we did move the ball. We were able to just to stay in the game. But this South Carolina team right now, the word that I'm looking for that this South Carolina team does not have is consistency. They're not consistently anything. They're from 1 minute to the next. You don't know what it's going to be, and they've got to get some sort of rhythm, some sort of consistency. And I think that in large part on the offense, that boils down to just youth, with Lenora Sellers being a freshman. He's a redshirt freshman. He had very limited playing time last year, mop up duties and the few blowouts that we had. So he's not used to this competition level against teams like a LSU, et cetera, in a close, tight game. He's not used to that environment. So we'll see moving forward. We got Akron this weekend, and I don't think that should be a problem for South Carolina. I would certainly hope that Akron's not a problem for South Carolina.
Yeah,
And
Akron,
looking,
and then it gets tough.
then it
Then
gets
it
it
Ole
gets
Miss, Alabama, and Oklahoma all in a row.
well, that 4 game stretch
Yeah,
is
A&M
going to
had
be
them
tough.
in there.
Yep, Ole
Then
Miss,
at Vandy,
Alabama.
then
Yep.
Missouri. So yeah, it's
Well, luckily we've got Missouri at home. We've never beaten Eli Drinkwitz. We didn't beat him at App State. We haven't beat him since he's been at Missouri. It'd be real nice to get that monkey off our back. That Ole Miss, Alabama, Oklahoma, Texas A&M stretch, they are gonna have to win at least one of those games to have a legitimate chance at a bowl. And I'm gonna go out on a limb here. I'm going to go out on a limb. I'm going to say it. I've been saying it since the beginning of the year, and I'm going to stick to my guns on it. I got South Carolina beating Ole Miss at home. I don't care if Ole Miss is number 1 in the country and undefeated. I've got South Carolina beating Ole Miss at home. Now, Alabama, Oklahoma, different story. But I think we'll beat Akron, and I think you'll see South Carolina come out and win that Ole Miss game.
I think Oklahoma's one you could get.
Oof, that would be. I believe, if my memory serves me correctly, that would be one of our biggest road wins. Beating UGA a few years ago when Rodrigo Blankenship missed the field goal in overtime. That was big. But South Carolina doesn't have a lot of big road wins, and under Shane Beamer, they've not been very good on the road at all, especially in SEC contests. The Kentucky game is one of the few exceptions. That's why that was such a surprise. Because South Carolina just has not done well on the road with Shane Beamer in the SEC schedule. So that's something that's got to take a turn for the better if this team wants to be viewed legitimately as an SEC contender.
Yep. So I guess we could transition maybe into the top 25. South Carolina did receive 3 votes for the AP poll, so they're not totally
Yeah,
being forgotten about.
I was hoping that South Carolina was going to be that lone team that got put in the top 25 by losing, but it wasn't to be.
No, and this poll was weak as SEC heavy. 6 of the top 17 are SEC teams. The only outlier is Ohio State. They're number 3. K-State, by the way, is 14th. 13th, I'm sorry. 13th. And Utah's 12th. But yeah, it's this is what I'm afraid of when it comes to playoff time, is that we're gonna have 6 or 7 teams in that 12-team playoff from the SEC.
Well,
I mean, I understand it's a good conference, probably the best overall conference. There's a lot of good teams at the top, but our 6 of the top 7 teams in the country all from the SEC. I don't know about that.
Who decides this anymore? I mean, is this is this a group of men in trench coats in a dark room somewhere in Orlando that are deciding
like
this? I don't know. I don't know how you go about not putting those SEC teams in there.
Because they were all ranked at the top at the beginning of the year, and now even if one of them loses, it's just because they're beating up on each other.
Right. It's yeah. I mean, it's cannibalism. It's the conference will start to cannibalize itself with losses among each other. I don't know, Joe. I don't know. I hear this discussion from non-SEC fans, the people that are fans of teams, that are in other conferences, and there's nothing I can say. I can't. I don't have any effective or sensible comment or anything to it. Is it unfair? I mean, it certainly seems unfair. But
Georgia barely beat Kentucky on Saturday.
So
Georgia
why
did
didn't
not
Georgia
look like,
drop?
if Georgia's the number 2 team in the country after Saturday, then there's some real crappy teams out there.
Right, but that's like the old,
But
everybody
I
wants.
understand you can't put them at number 10 because they won a close game.
Right. Then you get in. Then you
Still.
get into this argument of you're getting knocked down in the rankings for winning, so you're getting punished for winning. Well, the
Mm-hmm.
other side of that is you got somebody sitting there like Clemson who's still holding on at 21, and all Clemson has done is get absolutely obliterated by UGA and beat App State. That's all Clemson's done. Clemson's 1-1 with a win over App State, and they're sitting there at number 21 in the country. Now, is that an unfair ranking? Should somebody else that's 2-0 be ranked ahead of a 1-1 Clemson team? That 1-1 Clemson team started the season ranked where they were in the top 10.
I
Am I
think,
right?
yeah.
8, 7 or 8 or 9. So yeah, you get your doors blown off by UGA, and then you beat App State, and now you got an off week. Well, you're 1-1, and you're still number 21 in the country. And what have you done? So is that an unfair ranking? You know, how do we decide what's fair and what's unfair? I think that we'll see one day when I put on my glasses that help me see into the future. I think that we'll one day see, and I've said this to you before, something more along the lines of an NFL where we don't base our college football system and we don't base our college football playoff off of a poll that includes everybody. I think that we'll move more towards an NFL type system where this will be based more on the rankings, the position that you're in within your division or a subdivision of your division. If we go back to that, like the SEC used to have the SEC East and West, which we've now gotten rid of. Now we just have the SEC. I think that needs to be what fixes this discussion that you and I are having. That way we don't say, well, so-and-so's ranked, XYZ, or so-and-so's ranked this or that. I think that what we'll get to one day is where we'll say X amount of teams and pick a number, 100, 120, 140. I don't know the number, but we'll say all of these teams are equal. They are all equal. Okay. The SEC is not bigger than the Big 12. It's not greater than the Big 12. The Big 10 is not greater or bigger than the ACC. They are all equal. And what matters is their ranking, their positioning within those conferences. And I think that is ultimately what is going to decide who makes that playoff, exactly like the NFL system, where you have a bye.
Right. Eventually, we're going to be laughing at this system. It'd be like
sure.
if every writer if any NFL writer from every newspaper voted on the best NFL teams every week, and that's how
right, exactly, and
you
no
decided
one
who was going to play in the Super Bowl at the end of the year.
exactly.
It sounds ridiculous on the surface, but that's how we do college football.
And no one does that at all. And if you go back through the annals of college football, and if you go back, it's ridiculous now because I'm talking about almost 100 years. But if you go back, if you look in the 1930s, the 1940s, etc., I mean, you got Army as a national champion. I mean, Christ,
Yeah.
you got Yale. I mean, didn't Yale win a national title? I mean, so obviously somewhere along the way we realize, hey, you know what? If we want to do X, Y, and Z, we can make this really popular and we can make a whole lot of money. Now we're at that point where it's all kind of starting to crescendo. And I think that the end result is kind of like what we were just talking about, where you've got divisions, you got division leaders, so-and-so is clinched, so-and-so is, to borrow the term from the NFL, a wild card, or Major League Baseball, they have the wild card. So I think that is is what we're gravitating towards. And I think that that's why we're starting to see the formation of these mega conferences. These conferences aren't getting any smaller. They're not going back from 16 or 18. They're not going backwards. They're only going to
No.
get bigger. And I think that eventually we will have 4 equal sized conferences. And I think that those 4 conferences will be broken in half, and it'll be just like another NFL. It'll be, you got 8 divisions, except instead of 32 teams, you've got, 128 teams. And so we take our playoff system from that. And then the ones that are left over that don't make it into whatever that playoff system is, that is your bowl team. Those are your bowl teams and bowl games.
Yeah.
Because they don't want those to go anywhere.
Yeah.
But, the short answer, I'm sorry, I really went way outside on that. But yes, I can most definitely see where people say there is SEC bias, and it's unfair. It's an unfair lean towards the SEC. And I never had that aspect of things until I became friends with the guys from K-State, with you and with everybody else. And I started following K-State, and I started following the Big 12, and I started looking at things from outside of the world that I was used to. I never, I just, like me and you have discussed before, I just was this arrogant, obnoxious loudmouth that just thought the SEC was the best thing in the world, and we were super dominant, and there's nothing you can do to stop it, and nanny boo boo. And
I'm not complaining about K-State being at number 13. I kind of am, but who in that top 10 of those SEC teams that's beating the top 20 team by 24 points?
Exactly right.
I mean, Texas beat Michigan, Georgia beat Clemson, but now Clemson's barely in the top 25. So, and we don't know how good they are, but I'd have to go through all the schedules. But is K-State getting enough credit? Or are these SEC teams, since they were ranked higher at the beginning of the year, they've just beaten up on some patsies and they just keep them up there? So I don't know.
There's been a lot of things that have happened to a lot of teams that we've questioned here over the last few years. One thing that I questioned was you had an outstanding K-State team that won the Big 12 championship, that beat Texas Tech, that did not go to the playoff. Why? They won their conference. They beat that team. But you're okay. Well, you want to put that. Okay, well, that's fine. Take them, put them in there. Then last year, that whole debacle with Florida State, which it appears has essentially destroyed Florida State. I'll go on record as saying that Florida State being left out of the playoffs has essentially destroyed their football program, because everybody left. They're
yeah, exactly.
So
no, they can't win a game.
Yeah, and it's ridiculous, and it is not fair. It's not fair. But as long as the mouse, has got stacks of $1 billion bills under his hat, and he keeps stuffing them up there, he's going to keep doing what he's doing. I mean, don't piss off the mouse. That's the main thing. Is keep the mouse happy.
Right.
Keep Mickey happy. If you don't want to make him mad.
No. So one other thing I wanted to mention about college football before we switch to the NFL is Colorado keeps staying at the top of the news cycle. And this Shedeur Sanders, which is Deion's son, he's the quarterback, and they played Colorado State and they beat them. And after the game, the Colorado State quarterback walks up to him to shake his hands after the game, and Shedeur Sanders won't shake his hand. Did you see that?
I saw bits of it. I didn't witness it live, but it's not surprising.
It's really just like his dad always was. It seems like
I hope that if he does make it to the Heisman finals, I hope that the voters keep that in mind. I hope that that's one of the clips they play for the voters. Because if you want to talk about somebody that should be a Heisman Trophy winner, yeah, he should be an outstanding player. He should be a special player, et cetera. But I think that also a person's character should go into that a little bit. These are college athletes, and you should try and set yourself as a role model, be a role model, project that image. And it's nothing surprises me coming out of Colorado anymore. I'm not sure there's anything that could come out of Boulder that would really shock me. I mean, if we found out they were running drugs out of the locker room and had a distribution,
that wouldn't shock me at all.
No, I don't know what's going on there, but I see it being short lived. I think that their 2-1 record is very fragile. I wouldn't be surprised at all to see Baylor go into Boulder and whip up on them. I think that they got Colorado at -2, which is basically the 3 points for being at home. Is generally how Vegas has historically looked at that with college football. They kind of give you 3 points for being at home. Well, you got Colorado at -2, so you're telling me that Vegas is looking at Baylor to win by 1. I'm not buying it. I'm looking at Baylor to win big. I think that Colorado is going to start getting put in their place pretty quickly here.
Yeah, I hope so. I get Colorado State was kind of talking some stuff going into the game, but that's what these teams do, especially rivals. And
it's a rivalry.
The quarterback came up to shake his hand after the game and say, "Hey, we all good." And Shedeur Sanders had nothing. He wouldn't shake his hand. So it's BS, unsportsmanlike.
I mean, I think that the only time that I don't have a problem with that in sports is when it's obvious that someone has cheated or has otherwise won nefariously through some other means that they shouldn't have won by. But if you win fair and square, and if you lose fair and square, then shake hands. Good game. We'll see you next time. Whatever. Let's go back to being humans at this point.
Yeah,
it's just that Boulder has been a very interesting place the last couple of years, and I don't see the news stories slowing down coming out of Boulder anytime soon.
It sure doesn't look like it.
They call it Folsom Field. They may want to drop that field and start calling it Folsom Prison. But
I mean, you never know.
I mean, whatever.
All right, man. About the NFL. Now you texted me about the Saints, and then I followed up on that about them. They're legit, aren't they?
The Saints are outrageous. I don't know if the streak has continued because I didn't watch the rest.
I don't
of that
think
game.
It did. I think I turned on that game after you texted. If you don't know what we're talking about, they scored on 9 straight offensive possessions to start the year or something like that. Something crazy.
Going into the second quarter of that game, where they scored 3 touchdowns in the second quarter of that game. But yeah, the Saints had scored on every single offensive possession so far. I mean, they took it to Dallas. I mean, 44-19. Good Lord. I mean, that's a whipping. You don't typically see scores like that in the NFL. The NFL is usually set up in such a way that, about a 7 to 10 point victory is typically what you're going to get, because the league wants those games to be close. They want you tuned in. They want you watching. So that's, and the way that they do their draft, the way that, worst picks first, and et cetera, to keep everything, to keep the parity there. But that's a pretty good whipping, and I think the Saints are for real. They've been kind of iffy off and on here the last few years, but I mean they beat the Panthers by 37. They beat the Cowboys by 25. They got the Eagles coming up, who just had a gut wrenching loss last night. If whoever had to watch that, but did you watch that?
Yeah, a little bit of it.
Yeah, that was oof. That was hard, but I guess the Eagles are gonna eagle, right? I mean, you lose to the Falcons.
Out. And the 49ers lost.
Yeah, it's crazy. Well, you got Pittsburgh sitting there undefeated, so who knows where it's going to go from here. I mean,
You think these defenses are going to figure out the Saints after a while when Derek Carr, when they get video on this offense and everything and what they're doing? I
well,
think that might happen.
they figured out Philadelphia's tush push long ago, but they still can't stop it.
Yeah.
So I mean, I don't know. You might be able to figure out the Saints, but barring some injuries or some losses at some key positions, I don't really see the Saints slowing down all that much. Now, somebody may be able to beat them in a track meet. That if you get somebody that can hang with them score for score, that may very well happen. You could beat them that way, but I don't see anybody really being able to come out and just shut down that offense. I mean, you might be able, like I said, you might be able to play with them, but I don't think you're just going to come out and shut them down.
No, yeah.
What do you think about Tua? Is Tua done?
Um,
I
Sounds
think
like
he
he's coming back, so I trust that. I don't
that's
know if he should.
I don't think he should. I mean, I hate to see him, anything worse than what he's already
The
been
thing is, the
through.
play he got the concussion on, I didn't think he really got hit that hard. I think he got hit
No,
hard, but not hard in the head. Yeah, I think that's just a play that can happen anytime he scrambles.
yeah, it is, and you know, to us it doesn't look that hard, but let's remember. I mean, these are pros. These guys are studs, and they're moving at a high rate of speed. And there's nobody in the NFL that's weak. They're all pretty strong. I wouldn't want to get hit by any of them. What
No,
what matchups are you looking the most forward to this weekend? Your Packers are going down to Tennessee.
I don't. Yeah, I don't like that. I mean, they got one. They got it done yesterday, barely. But until Jordan Love comes back, I can't predict anything.
We got the Chargers coming to Pittsburgh, and I think that Pittsburgh is going to exit the ranks of the undefeated this Sunday. So I don't think that they got right. They got Pittsburgh as a favorite right now, but there again, it's a close spread. Everything in the NFL is usually pretty close, but it's Pittsburgh -2 against the Chargers at home. I see a close Charger win there. Pittsburgh's got a lot to work on. Pittsburgh's got a lot to work on.
Yeah,
The quarterback situation is not ideal, but they've got a lot of calorie sap space. The salary cap is what he said, space available. But we'll see. I still feel like Kansas City is probably the class of the league. They've
yeah, they
got
got
that.
one done against the Bengals again. That
Yeah,
was kind of a crazy game.
that was.
Mahomes, I mean, he had a couple good plays in the game. He had a long pass to Rice for a touchdown, Rasheed Rice, but he had one really bad interception and another what I would call a bad interception.
Well,
And
I think Cincinnati was just kind of getting after him a little bit and giving him some strange looks. I don't think that he was getting the looks that they were used to based on their film of their history with Cincinnati. I think that they were throwing some different looks at him, and it kind of made him stop and take another look there.
mhm.
It was a good game. I think Cincinnati's good. I think Cincinnati may be one of those teams that you need to look out for later in the year. It's
Yeah, and
it's
there was that controversy at the end with the Chiefs had a 4th and 16, and there was a pass interference on the Bengals, which was
no,
pass interference. I mean, we talked about officiating earlier. I mean, this one you had to call. The guy had got there a full second before the ball and jumped on the guy's back. But everyone says the Chiefs get all the calls, but I mean that one was obvious. I think you had to call that one.
yeah. You don't if it starts a whole lot more controversy if you don't call that one versus
Yeah,
then you calling it. So ask you this. I was looking at some of the games this weekend coming up, and I wanted to know if you had um, an upset for this weekend in college football
Hmm.
that you were looking out for.
I don't know. Can you call Oklahoma State beating Utah an upset?
Well, I mean,
I was thinking of that one
I don't think you can call that an upset. I mean, I think that's.
because they're both kind of ranked
I
in the
mean, I think
same place.
if I
But
yeah right, but if I mean if I had to pick the edge in that right now, I'd pick Utah. I mean, I think even with that game being in Stillwater, I think that Utah team's awfully good. And that's what I'm looking at that right now. That's a 4 o'clock game in Stillwater. I think that Utah team's got something special, man. I think that Utah team's good. Um, I, I know they're good. They're number 12 in the country, and I know Oklahoma State's good. They're number 14 in the country, so they're both good. But I think that Utah team has got a pretty good shot at going undefeated.
hmm,
I really do. So I wouldn't necessarily call that an upset, regardless of who wins or loses that game. I wouldn't think of that as an upset much. But I've been looking, and I've got a couple of upsets in mind that I'm definitely going to keep my eye on. There's a few games out there this weekend that are really interesting. Tennessee at Oklahoma is interesting. I think
yeah, I
Oklahoma
was
will
going to
take care of
mention
that.
that one.
One game that I see that's really interesting that I want to tune in and watch just for the heck of it is Virginia at Coastal Carolina. And what is interesting about that is ESPN. I don't know where they pull their ticket for sale information. I'm guessing StubHub or SeatGeek or one of those places. I don't know, but they've got tickets as low as $125 for the Virginia at Coastal Carolina game. And unless I have looked incorrectly, unless my eyes have deceived me, the only other game on the entire slate that is more expensive for tickets, according to ESPN, than Virginia at Coastal Carolina is Tennessee at Oklahoma. And they're saying tickets as low as $167 for that one. Now, a lot of these games, they're in the 20s and 30s. There's some in the 50s, and some of the big marquee games, they got them up there in the 90s and hundreds. But that Tennessee Oklahoma game, 167, and then the next highest, Virginia at Coastal Carolina. I don't know. Maybe it's the Myrtle Beach factor. A lot of people from Virginia, it's not that far of a drive from Virginia to South Carolina. It's a pretty small stadium. Maybe that's what's driving that. It's not a 90,000 seat arena, it's a really small stadium. But I found that an interesting game. And if Coastal beats Virginia, is that an upset? Much like
Oh, I
your
would say
question.
definitely.
Now, this is the same team that beat BYU a few years back in the COVID game. So Coastal has proven they can play with some of the bigger teams. Let's see what Coastal's schedule is. It's not very impressive. Let's
No.
see. Jacksonville State, William and Mary, Temple, Virginia, Old Dominion, James Madison, the Raging Cajuns, who used to be, I guess, Louisiana Monroe, now Louisiana. Troy, App State, Marshall, Georgia Southern, and Georgia State. So that Virginia game is the biggest game on their schedule. The one that I saw that really is the upset for me that I'm definitely going to be looking forward to, and I want to make sure I find it here. It's Arkansas State against, where is it? Where is it that I saw that? Arkansas State at Iowa State in Ames, 2 o'clock p.m.
You think Arkansas State might have a shot?
Arkansas State's only loss this year is a 10-point loss at Michigan. They've got wins against Tulsa and Central Arkansas, which doesn't say much, especially since those are close wins. But the loss to Michigan in the Big House by just 10 points, even though it's a bad Michigan team by Michigan standards, certainly by last year's Michigan team standards, and we know that they've lost their edge a little bit. This is not the same Michigan team. That's still a pretty tough test for that team to go into Ann Arbor. So they're not going to be scared of going into Ames. And I think that Arkansas State, number one in the Sun Belt, the Red Wolves, I'm going to call them going into Ames and pulling the upset against the Cyclones.
Hmm.
Now, I'll probably be
We will
wrong.
see. I wouldn't agree with you, but
Well, nobody would. Nobody would. And Vegas would love to see me put about $1,000 on that, I'm sure.
yeah.
I'm not going to put $1,000 on that. I wouldn't bet $1 on it. I certainly wouldn't bet my mortgage on it. And I'm probably wrong. Iowa State will probably win that game, but I'm going to be watching that one just because it's the one game that I looked at and I just kind of picked out and said, you know what? Arkansas State might beat Iowa State. How about that? Wouldn't that be something? So don't get upset, Cyclone fans. I'm not talking trash to you and saying that your program's horrible. I'm not. I'm just saying, it's just something that caught my eye and just a funny little thing. I
I
think I'll
wouldn't
pick
put it
them.
past them. I mean, I wouldn't be shocked if it happened.
I'm
Iowa State is a 22-point favorite.
yeah. But I mean, I don't know why it caught my eye. There's nothing. I don't have any stake in it. I'm not an Arkansas State fan. I'm not an Iowa State fan, and I'm certainly not a detractor of either program. I don't hate either program by any means, but for whatever reason, that game caught my eye, and I started looking at it a little bit. And I don't, I don't think that leaving the Big House and then going to Ames, I don't think that you'd be intimidated. They're not going to be intimidated. They would have been intimidated the week before. I mean, you played in front of the biggest stadium, the biggest crowd in college football. I mean, you played at the Big House and you kept it, presentable. I mean,
Yeah.
a 10 point loss to Michigan for a Sun Belt team. That's I mean, hey, how comfortable would you feel as a diehard K State fan? How comfortable would you feel if Arkansas State came into the bill and left with a 10-point loss? What would your thought be on that? I know if Arkansas State came to Williams-Brice and left with a 10-point loss, I'd be, ooh, that's not good.
Yeah, Kleiman has these non-con games like that, though. So I guess I wouldn't be shocked.
Yeah,
I'd be shocked if they lost, or if K-State
it's just
lost.
it's just there's a lot of unknowns there. There's unknowns because we don't know how bad Michigan is this year with what they've been through, and we
Yeah.
don't know how good Arkansas State is because we know very little about them. I just thought it would be a fun little thing to throw out there and just say,
Mhm.
hey, I'm picking Arkansas State to upset Iowa State. So if it happens, I called it first.
All right. We'll track it.
Now watch, Iowa State will beat them about 46-3.
Yeah. All right. Well, how many times will Trump get shot at this week?
I don't know. It depends. I mean, I guess it depends on if Hillary starts arresting everybody for saying that he's ever been shot at. Is that misinformation?
Yeah, right.
I don't know. I'll be glad when all of this is behind us and we get. I don't even know what to think anymore, Joe. I don't know what this country is gonna do. I don't know where we're heading, and to be honest, and I've told you this before, I'm not even 100% sure that it matters who we elect anymore. And I know it does. I know it does matter, and I'm gonna exercise my right to vote. But I feel like there's just so much corruption and filth and greed and underhanded just nastiness at every level of government, from small town mayors all the way up to the president of the United States. And it's just sickening. And what does it take to fix it? What is the solution? I don't know anymore. I don't know if there is one. This is just, it's all
All I
getting
know
to
is the founders did not foresee this. This is not what they had in mind.
absolutely not. Absolutely not. I fully believe that and I've told you this before. I've maintained this, and I won't shy away from it now. I believe that if all of our founders came back, they would absolutely destroy it. They would say, "Tear it down,
Yeah.
tear it down." You,
There'd be another
it's
Boston Tea Party. And
yeah, yeah. It's like the little popsicle stick houses and the little houses of cards you used to make, as a kid. You can't have something wrong down at the bottom and keep building on top of it and hope to keep going up and up and up. If you've got something wrong down there at the bottom, then the whole thing is going to be wrong. And we've got something wrong at the fundamental level in this country. We've got something very wrong in this country. I don't know how to fix it other than you don't continue to add to it. At some
Mhm.
point, it has to stop. I don't know what that is or what that means, but I know that you're exactly right. This is not the way the founders intended for this to be. They did not intend for us to have career politicians. They did not intend for big business to be this intertwined with our government. They did not intend for our country to be ran by lawyers. That's
No.
not who's supposed to be running the country. The country is supposed to be ran by citizens, and it's not being ran by citizens. It's being ran by big business and by attorneys. That's who's running the country.
I had
And
someone that mentioned today, like, why is every other commercial on TV for some pharmaceutical or some pill? Because of the big pharma.
or
They're
a
running
lawyer.
things, they're in the pockets of all the politicians. And, oh, that's a whole nother subject.
Well, I mean, to me, I think that the three most common commercials on television, aside from the political ads, are either for something pharmaceutical, or they're for an attorney, or they're for insurance. So, if those between those three industries, pharmaceutical, law, and insurance, if you guys have this much money for this many ads across this many networks, why in the hell am I paying what I'm paying every month for car insurance that I might use once every 10 years?
Yeah.
I mean, where's the rub on that? And then you got people out there working, and they're getting $200 or $300 every 2 weeks or whatever it may be taken out of their paycheck for health insurance. Well, they don't hardly ever go to the doctor. They try and take care of themselves. And then when they need to use that insurance to go to the doctor, now they've got some ridiculous copay or that they've got to meet, or some deductible they've got to meet before it kicks in. Well, what the hell's the point? Why am I paying you? Why
Yeah.
don't I just do like everybody else in America and just wait till it's bad enough for me to go to the ER and just not pay my bill, like
Right.
like
Yeah.
you know like another certain segment of the population does. I just won't pay it. I mean, there is no debtor's prison. What are you going to do? You're not going to throw me in jail.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know, Joe. It's ridiculous. And I even the America of our youth, from the 70s and 80s, is just a distant memory. And when I look at America right now, and I look at the youth right now, I'm scared as hell at what we may see in 20 or 30 years. I don't know what it looks like.
Oh, me either. Yeah. I'm scared about what's going to happen.
But if
It's a mess.
they've Trump deserves the same protections as anybody else that is on that platform, that is in uh, that is in that potential candidacy for president, and especially as a former president. And it's obvious that he's not getting it. It's obvious
No.
that
Yeah.
there's been numerous instances of things that have happened that have not been fortuitous for Donald Trump, and those things have not gone the other way at all. So, what is it? Is Trump the only? You're telling me Trump's the only politician out there that has ever done anything wrong, or that y'all have any dirt on at all? Y'all don't have any dirt on Hillary Clinton. Y'all don't have any dirt on Joe Biden. Are you serious right now? You don't have any dirt on Barack Obama? Are you serious? I mean,
Oh, there's plenty of dirt, but it's
there
all
can't.
about who runs it, who
There
runs the
can't
machine.
be. There can't be, Joe. I know for a fact that Hillary and Bill Clinton and Barack Obama and the Bidens, I know that they have never done anything wrong, because if they had, I know that the trustworthy folks at CNN would report it to me honestly and fairly.
No, that's the funniest thing you've ever said.
I came up with that one all on my own.
Oh,
I'll
good.
be here all night. Tip your waitress.
I think we'll leave it on that high note, but just to let everyone know, Monty and I have talked about getting into a little bit of politics and news talk. So we'll probably try to add that. We'll see what kind of feedback we get, and may add some politics and news talk to these podcasts. So
bring it on. I try and stay in the middle of the road as much as I can, but the road is getting bumpy, folks.
That's
the
right.
road is getting bumpy.
All right. Well, thank you, sir. Got an exciting weekend of college football and NFL, and it's that time of year. Fun stuff.
I'll try and stay awake to watch the Cats, because I want to see that game out there in BYU.
Yeah.
That's a beautiful. If there is anybody from the BYU fan base or the Utah area listening, that is an absolutely beautiful part of the country, and I'm jealous for the K-State fans that are making the trip to go out there, because I've always wanted to see Utah. So,
But no tailgating, no beer. So,
well, there's other things. You can always just carry a thermos. They make them in 64 ounces. But the K-State fans that are heading out there, enjoy that and take lots of pictures. And
Yep.
I'm sure it's going to be a beautiful trip. And go Cats, and go Cox.
All right, sounds good, brother. Talk to you next week.
All right, brother, man. Have a good one. We'll talk to you later.
All right, man. Bye.
All right, bye.